my longtime friend and my colleague, Calvin Watkins from the Dallas Morning News, joining me now. And Calvin, I mean, on a regular day, we could be talking about the Cowboys, their new defensive coordinator, their new staff, and everything. But what a time to be a voter in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I bet you were you guys have all of a sudden sort of become under siege because it's like, oh my gosh, you're all being sort of painted by the same broad brush. And I appreciate your column on Dallas Morning News sort of explaining. So Calvin, just so I know, and by the way, welcome to the Mosley, this new YouTube version where we can see you and kind of see what you're up to. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thanks, man. This is my first time here. I love the background. You got a beautiful background there of what's going on in Waco and your home and everything.
Yeah.
I think it's a Dallas Morning News story behind you to your right. I don't know. But
yeah, I got some of my old 1A stories. You and I used to have a few of those back in the day. We may have some new studios soon, Calvin. So I may actually have to leave the house, which that would be tough. What was your level of surprise, shock when you saw the story come out yesterday? Seth Wickersham, Don Van Natta from ESPN. I know The Athletic had something as well, but that he was not, that Bill Belichick would not be a first ballot Hall of Famer. I'm sure your first thought was like, how did they get this? We don't even know, right? You don't even know. Obviously, we kind of can probably guess how somebody obviously leaked that story. But what was your level of surprise when you saw this story hit?
I was very surprised. Like you, I was like, okay, how did they know, right? Because none of the voters, we voted January 13th, and no one told us who got in, right? The Hall of Fame said, we're not going to tell you because there was some leaks last year. So they said, we're not going to tell you who gets in. We will tell you eventually, maybe the week before the official announcement or the week of the official announcement. And then I was like a little shocked about why Bill Belichick didn't get in. I mean, the man is like, he's got 6, world titles as a head coach, 8 overall. I think he's 3rd in wins in league history. He's won more division titles than anybody that has coached in the NFL. He turned the Patriots around. I mean, I just don't understand it. Apparently, there's some politics going on. And there's only 50 voters, right? So you got to get 80% of the vote. So maybe someone's manipulating the votes in terms of convincing people he's not worthy of the Hall of Fame.
The process was tweaked pretty recently, I guess, since you started voting. This is your 3rd year to vote. I'm sure it felt like a great honor, and now you're like, do I really want to keep doing this?
Should have done the Boxing Hall of Fame. That was easier.
Did the process change in the sense that, as I understand it, these 5 sort of, you got the old players, you got like Robert Kraft, a contributor, you got a coach involved, like basically that's a vote where you basically vote, yay or nay, yes or no, and you can vote for like 3 of the 5 of these, what we would call the senior. Can you explain to us, you did a nice job in that column, by the way, but like, why was this done? Because I feel like maybe what's happened here is an unintended consequence. Like maybe we have something happening that they probably had a good reason for doing this, but even your colleague Dan Pompei has said he thought that was a bad move in the voting process. Now, you may not want to be that critical of them. That's fine. But what happened? What was the big change here that perhaps could have led to something like this?
Well, originally, as it stands now, you vote. You're going to vote between a coach a contributor, which could be a former commissioner, it could be an owner, it could be someone who worked for NFL Films, could be a media member, a broadcaster, and a senior player, right? So that's all in one category now. So basically, those 5 people are like battling each other for 80% of the vote. Before, it used to be separate. If there was one coach, you would say, okay, we'll vote for that coach. If not, you don't have to do that. If it was one senior player, okay, you can vote for one senior player. It's whatever. But all those guys used to be lumped in with the modern era players. So, but now it's separated, and we vote separately from the modern era players. Like last year, Sterling Sharp was the only person from that group that got in the Hall of Fame, right? And so now this year's group was, as we mentioned, Bill Belichick, Roger Craig, Robert Kraft, L.C. Greenwood, and Kenny Anderson. Yes. Those were the 5 we were voting from. And whoever got the highest vote, or at least 80% of the vote, will get in the Hall of Fame. So they're all competing against each other instead of separately. And then we vote for the 15 modern era players. Whoever gets the highest vote, or 80%, they get in. The objective for the Pro Football Hall of Fame is to get the smaller the classes, the better, right? That's their goal.
All right. Did you sense any, like, you came away from this vote, and it seems like to me the voters didn't really sense some sort of huge opposition. And I know we got to be careful here, because that's one of the things when you sign up to be a voter, you can't really talk about what happens during the voting process. You can say which way you voted. But to me, that would lead to your level of surprise would be, wait a second. And it's already been acknowledged by voters that it did come up, but it was almost more in passing. Is that an accurate portrayal in your mind of how this thing was discussed in the voting? Again, don't want to get you in any trouble here, but that it wasn't like some kind of big knockdown drag out thing, like we're half the groups fighting to keep him out and half the groups fighting to get him in.
Every every person who's presented. So say this year I presented Darren Woodson, right? The Cowboys safety. After you present him, then there's a discussion about the particular individual, whether it's the pros and the cons. There were pros and cons on Bill Belichick, right? There was Spygate, there was the Deflategate, right? So those things were discussed as they would any player. Julius Peppers, who got inducted into the Hall of Fame last year, he got suspended for the last 4 games of the 2002 season for performance-enhancing drugs.
Yeah,
that was discussed, and yet he was a first ballot Hall of Famer. So all the positives and negatives are discussed on every candidate. That's the best way I can answer that.
Okay, and like with Woodson, you're right. It can be brought up, and then, by the way, when you present for somebody like Woody, generally, so this thing, the voting meeting can go on from, let's say, somewhere in the neighborhood of like maybe as long as 6 to 8 hours.
Maybe a little longer. We start around 9 a.m. Central.
Okay.
It might not end until 6 p.m. Central.
Okay. And before you vote on somebody, like, say, the Woody vote, you get to have your say, and then it's open to the floor for some discussion, right? And then and each candidate gets hopefully like a fair shake and all that kind of stuff. Well, I'm glad. We needed somebody like you to try to get Woody, and I'm sure you made a great case. I mean, again, Woody makes an incredible case for himself, but I also think sometimes it's helpful to have a very likable and talented presenter. All right, and that's what
sometimes
it
is. Yeah, some of the former Hall of Famers, some of the Hall of Famers, or guys who are trying to get in the Hall of Fame, they have complained over the years about the presenters. They said, "Well, can I hire somebody to present me?" Like someone would say, "Can I hire Al Michaels to present me?" Right?
In the room. Yeah.
In the room, yes.
Yeah.
However, it's not so much who presents you. It is not even so much what they say. I think a lot of voters, myself included, we have our own ideas about a lot of these guys, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you go into the room and you're thinking, I'm not voting for him, right? Regardless of what's being said. Eli Manning, who covering when you were the NFC East man for a company we used to work for, you've seen Eli Manning at his peak, right? He's won 2 Super Bowls. He had a long streak of consecutive starts as a QB. And in my mind, I didn't think he was a Hall of Famer. I just didn't think he did enough. But I had an open mind when Gary Myers, the former NFL writer for the New York Daily News, presented Eli Manning, right? And he made some valid points, but I didn't think he was, because I did my own research on Eli Manning. Frank Gore, who was also for the Hall of Fame this year, he is 3rd all time in rushing yards, right? I had my own thoughts about him. I think he's a Hall of Famer. Others might not believe that. Some are using his longevity against him in some instances. Some don't think he needs to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. So everyone's got their various opinions about who should be in the Hall of Fame. But I always thought Bill Belichick, with 6 Super Bowl rings and turning around the Patriots into a dynasty, I thought that was a slam dunk.
Yeah, I agree with you. But a lot of fans don't. A lot of fans are happy with this, and it's not a great look, of course, that Polian doesn't really act like he remembers for sure who he voted for. Dungy's in there too. You got some Colts. You just have so many. You got some
Colts. You got some rivals.
That's got to be interesting when you're presenting. Now, by the way, this used to be everybody would hole up during Super Bowl week. How is this done now? Is this a Zoom type deal, or do all y'all gather together? How does this go now? This voting process?
It's a Zoom call.
Yeah.
I would say, man, about 3 years ago, they tried to bring us to Atlanta for a real in-person session. Because as you know, Matt, you're right. They used to get together before the Super Bowl and then vote. But now what has happened is the Hall of Fame has gotten kind of commercial. So they like the knocks. So they like to bring a TV crew to, say, Matt Mosley's house and knock on his door and surprise him and say, hey, you got in the Baylor Hall of Fame, right?
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful moment because your family's there, a close personal friend is there, and they present that to you. So now we don't vote the week of the Super Bowl. We vote in early January, and basically the 3.5 weeks between when we vote and the Hall of Fame is spent knocking on the doors of the new Hall of Famers for television. So the last 3 years, it's been a virtual discussion. The Hall of Fame has told the voters they hope to possibly bring us all together at some point in person, because I think an in-person conversation might be better than a Zoom call.
That's interesting. Do the John McClanes and a lot of these people that have retired, can some of those people stay on the deal? I mean, Peter King was on it forever. I don't believe he is anymore. Some people retire. You quoted in your column your story that I really enjoyed in the Morning News, Dallas Morning News website. Glauber, who's a friend of ours, he no longer votes. Can some of those guys who aren't as active as someone like you in the business anymore, do they still keep voting, I guess? I mean, the truth is, now that I think about it, Polian doesn't really have a job, and he's still voting. So, yeah, I guess the answer to that is yes. Hey, I would vote against whatever Myers said. No, I'm kidding. Gary's a friend. That was one of my favorite Myers stories. I got up after a Giants game, and I told him, I'm like, Gary, I said, man, I got some good stuff down there in the locker room. I got to tell you, I got some really good stuff. And Gary looks at me, and he was being as serious as he could be. He's like, Mosley, I have an embarrassment of riches. And he was not being ironic. In his mind, he's like, I pretty much have all the good stuff. Cal, who presented Belichick?
Ron Borges.
Who's a guy who's retired, long time writer. Okay.
Right, for the Boston Globe and the Boston Herald. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So but I guess it's only so much I can say.
Yeah, I get it.
But there were great presentations, right?
Okay.
I really hate this because the Hall of Fame should be about who got in, right? Instead of who didn't get in. And then after we voted, I said, I think we'll have a really good class. That's how I felt, right? I felt like we'll have a really good class because Drew Brees was up, Fitzgerald was up, Darren Woodson, Jason Witten. So there was a lot of good candidates, Frank Gore. And I felt good about however this is going to play out, Adam Vinatieri, Bill Belichick, it's going to be a really good class. And now that it's been revealed in some ways that Belichick is not getting in, I don't know if it puts a cloud over. I don't know how you feel about that, but it almost puts a cloud over the class because it's going to be a good class whether you have Belichick or not, right? Because there's some guys who are very well deserving of getting in.
Totally agree. I think it's a great point. It also does not help visually or optically that Kraft is still trying to get in at the same time that now we know Belichick's not going to get in. And those two have had a very public falling out.
Right.
And, we've joked about Jerry fighting to keep Bob out. Now they've kept Bill out. And everybody, of course, weighs in. Of course, what happens is they, now will attack. It's like the Baseball Hall of Fame. People hate that process because it's kind of too hard. And, do we keep the cheaters out? And then, of course, people will bring up Pete Rose. People already have. And the cheaters in baseball to go, they're out. Why shouldn't Belichick be under the same thing? And, again, I can refute all that. But there are some people, you're never going to get them past that. Now, the problem is there were at least 11 people in that room that, again, he'll get in. Okay, let me ask you this. How long will it take? You think he'll keep being brought up until he eventually gets in? Don't you think the committee, the panel and everybody will try to right this wrong as quickly as next year's voting? I mean, is that probably what will happen in your mind?
Well, in the summer, there's a subcommittee. There's a senior subcommittee, a contributor subcommittee, and a coaches subcommittee. And so they look at all the candidates and they say, okay, who is our best candidate from this particular category? And in the coaches, last year was Mike Holmgren, and he didn't get in. So this year was Bill Belichick. So presumably you would think, he's good. So the subcommittees will have to decide again if they want to submit Bill Belichick for the Hall of Fame. Because the Hall of Fame changed the process here. When you were a coach, you had to be retired for 5 years before being eligible for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. A couple of years ago, they changed it to 1 year. So that's why Belichick's name came up. Steelers coach Mike Tomlin, who just resigned, if he doesn't coach in 2026, and it appears he will not coach, he can be brought up for the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 2027. So it is very interesting, the thought processes of voters and how the process overall from the Pro Football Hall of Fame has changed.
I mean, our old buddy Gary Patterson waited and he got into College Football Hall of Fame recently. You heard that news. And now he's jumped back in. He went ahead and he'll accept that. And now he's going to be the USC defensive coordinator. Calvin, this is good stuff. I really appreciate it. This is I wanted to visit through some of this. And so I really appreciate you shedding light on it. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you at least one Cowboys question. Did this Christian Parker hire? Good kid. That's right. He's only like 20 years younger than us. They're letting kids up there now. I guess to fans, this is exciting in a sense because it's different than what Jerry normally does with his coordinators. He loves, especially defensive coordinator. He loves the former head coaches, the head coaching experience. This not only is this not a former head coach, he has not called plays before, but he is viewed as a hot, up and coming, big time. Now we've seen these guys before, Calvin. Chris, what's his name? What used to be with the Seahawks. Was that second? Yeah, we were like, hey man, this guy'd be a great guy. He'd be a great defense coordinator. I don't even know where Chris Richard is these days. So this guy is got the hot hand. He's with the Eagles. How do you think this is going to go? And like a 34-year-old guy doesn't exactly have a huge Rolodex of like, oh, I'll go hire this huge, all these veteran great defensive coaches. How is this? What do you think of the hire? And how is this staff coming along that he's trying to put together?
I was surprised they hired him, not because I don't think he's any good. I was just surprised based on what you said. Jerry Jones has very rarely hired guys who have never had experience at calling anything. So, and Christian Parker is one of those guys. He's a young guy, as we said, 34 years of age. When Tom Landry got the job in 1960, he was 36, right? So there's something to be said for youth, and that you can get some success. I don't believe his Rolodex is as bad as it seems. He had coached in Denver, and he had coached in Minnesota, and he had coached in Philly. So he does have a lot of people at his disposal that he could probably hire from. Marcus Dixon, an old friend of ours, used to play for the Cowboys. He was a D-line coach in Minnesota. I think he's going to bring him in to be the D-line coach. He comes from the Vic Fangio tree. Vic, as you know, was a former defensive coordinator in Denver, and he's currently the defensive coordinator in Philly. So I think he'll get some guys from that tree to bring with him. Maybe he keeps a couple of guys that are currently on the Cowboys staff here or there. From my understanding, he's a good teacher. He relates well to players. He has a unique way of getting the scheme taught to players. And that means his schemes are not too exotic, but the schemes are flexible enough to fit the players that he has. And as the Cowboys stressed to me, he's a very good teacher. Coach Brian Schottenheimer wanted that in the next coordinator, and he wanted also someone who could develop some players, something that Mike Zimmer and Matt Eberflus did not do in their 2 years combined as a defensive coordinator. So I think it's a good hire, but as Matt, as you know, of all these hires, if it doesn't work out, it wouldn't surprise us.
All right, buddy. I've heard rumors that you're trying to, relinquish the duties of like the Calvin Watkins mock. I always love a Watkins mock draft. You remember the Mosley mock? Those things they were mocked more than they were read.
The draft was something else. Oh my goodness.
Oh man, but hey, I'm kind of like Gosselin. I like a good top 100 list, and if I can hit like 87 of those, and what happened, by the way? Isn't it interesting that young writers, we were trained up a certain way, and we all had different skill sets. But the one thing we didn't try to do was like watch a bunch of film and become like self-appointed draft experts. But it almost happened overnight. It's like now, if you're covering the league and you're like in your 20s and 30s, you were kind of like you break all these players down on film. I think I'm past the point of trying to do that, Calvin. But anyway, it's an interesting process. I remember years ago, like Broadus would try to get me to come over and watch film at his house. And I'd end up back there playing with a dog or something. I just couldn't. I couldn't stay focused. Archer was up there acting like he knew what he was doing. I was completely unfocused, as you might imagine. Calvin, I appreciate it, man. Keep up the good work, and I appreciate that column you wrote. I thought that was a good explanatory type deal, and we'll see what happens. People will demand change, and who knows? Then they'll try to identify the leaker, but we know the leaker cannot. I don't think it can be coming from the voters, because you guys don't know. Yeah.
No, I think it's someone on Belichick's side. There's a certain point when if you go, I haven't heard from anybody in the Hall of Fame, that must mean I didn't get in, right?
Yes.
Just knowing how things go, and I'm sure Belichick, I don't know if it was him personally or someone close to him, I'm sure they made a call to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and someone said, no, you didn't get in because we've completed our knocks in a sense. So so I'm sure he had an idea, and then two ESPN reporters come fishing for information, and that's how it happened. But I doubt that. I seriously doubt that the voters didn't know, right? Now what happens is after you find out he didn't get in, then I'm sure they called a couple of voters asking them for some information about what happened.
Yeah. All right. Well, you know what's going to happen here. Kraft's going to get in, and Belichick's not, and it's going to be a whole thing. Hey, I really appreciate it. Love talking to you under any circumstance. Yeah, but that was fun to catch up with you, and tell your boys I said hi. In fact, I look at box scores from time to time for a team that I didn't really know in the past, but
me neither.
You've had Division I athletes. You had one son playing at Kentucky earlier this season in a game, and I love it. I love seeing how many minutes and what he scored, and it's a pretty neat thing to follow, because I knew your kids when they were tiny little guys, and to see them grow up like they are, it's an amazing thing. So, all right, buddy, I appreciate you.
All right, buddy, take care of yourself.
There he goes, Calvin Watkins of the Dallas Morning News.